Today, let us learn about the yin yang philosophy, which is a Chinese concept, and we are talking about two very powerful forces which are not opposing to each other, but they are complementary and compensatory to each other. And for a human existence, to experience what it is to be a human in a full spectrum, we need both of them. So yin represents the feminine element or the feminine principle, and yang represents the masculine principle. Now, when we understand this in a deeper manner, yin yang is not just the concept given by Chinese, and this is not the only concept which describes this duality, but we see this in Hindu philosophy and Greek philosophy as well. In Hindu philosophy, we see the concept of Shiva and Shakti. So, the Shiva is the stillness, the witness, and the masculine element, right? Shakti, on the other hand, is the creative life force, which is the feminine element. In Greek philosophy, there is the concept of Apollo and Dionysus. So Apollo is the masculine principle and Dionysus is the feminine principle. When we see different cultures saying the very same thing, it has to be the universal truth. Therefore, Dr. Mahesh Gandhi sir writes that every metaphysical system teaches the very same concept, which is the one of transforming existence from duality to unity. In other words, the aim is to become whole again. The aim of a pure consciousness is to overcome non-wholeness and become healed. Let us understand yin yang in a more detailed manner. Now, as we know that when we divide our body into two parts, the right part is your masculine part and the left part is your feminine part. Why is this so? Because the right brain, when we lateralize the brain, the right side of the brain represents the feminine element and the left side of your brain represents the masculine element. We'll understand this in a more detailed manner further. So now when we divide our brain into two parts, the left and the right part of the brain is represented by the feminine principle and the left part of the brain is the masculine principle. So let us understand the keywords for the right lateralization, which is the feminine principle, and left lateralization, which is the masculine principle. So when we talk about the right lateralization, the keywords are intuitive, holistic perception, random, emotional, non-verbal, adventurous, impulsive, creative, and imaginative. When we talk about the left lateralization, the keywords are analytical, detail-oriented, rational, verbal, cautious, planning, logic, and order. Feminine principle is the principle where we begin our journey and later on we enter the masculine principle era. And this is exactly what we have seen even in our evolutionary charts. So the first beings, which is the vertebrates we are talking about, the first beings were the water. Then came the amphibians, then came the reptiles, and then came the mammals. And further we go to birds. So the feminine principle is the element where we start our journey. So it is the yin comprises of the negative feminine receptive principle and it corresponds to the individual's unconscious. This is written by Dr. Mahesh Gandhi sir in his book. The main qualities of yin are motherly love, compassion, and selflessness. This energy is like a river. If the current of the river encounters a mountain, the river will flow around it. And in this principle, there is predominance of heart over brain. And that is why we have seen that the yin principle is the principle where there is more of emotions instead of logic. Further, in this principle, there is motherly love, and it gives us a feeling of safety and unconditional love. If we want to see yin principle in our charts, in periodic table, we see the first three rows are represented by the feminine principle, which is the first row in which there is conception, second row in which there is the labor process and birth, and in the third row, it is infancy period. Now, infancy period is considered as the period of extended womb stage. Why? Because in that period also, the infant is more dependent on the mother, and that is why it is the period of feminine principle. When we talk about plants, in monocots, the first three subclasses are represented by the feminine principle, and in dicotyledon chart, the first four subclasses are represented by the feminine principle. Further, Dr. Mahesh Gandhi sir writes that it also establishes the basis for existential confidence, ability to love and be loved. The feminine side is creative, sensitive, nurturing, healing, comforting, caring, and patient. Now let us understand the masculine principle. Talking about masculine principle, it is the yang element, and it is represented by the sun energy. Sun energy is the fire, and fire is the element of masculine principle. Why is the fire the main element of masculine energy? Is because masculine energy is involved in doing the things, whereas feminine element is the water, and water is just being, the state of just being, and masculine principle is the state of doing, actively doing. So Dr. Mahesh Gandhi sir writes that yang is the symbol of an active, positive, masculine principle, which also corresponds to the day consciousness. This is correlated with the functions of the left hemisphere of the brain, and this energy represents power and aloneness. During this process, this male part helps in individuating and developing the consciousness. An individual is able to realize his special and unique potentials. The masculine aspect has the job to teach active doing in the world, and the world he lives in becomes divided into I and the others. So what we develop in our masculine element era is the ability of cognition. So mainly, if we see the stages of development, Erik Erikson stages of development, the initial stages, which is womb, infancy, is and toddler, more or less, is the era of principal element. From school age, when there is the consciousness of I and the others, where there is split between I and the others, we start in the masculine principle. Further, Dr. Mahesh Gandhi sir writes that the masculine element creates a split in oneness, and this brings along with it the awareness of others. And this is exactly what we have seen in the school age. The ego develops by recognizing the other, that is the world. The world that is beyond the personal I. In this context, the plant chart, in the plant chart, we see the fifth and sixth subclasses as the masculine element, and we are talking about the dicotyledon chart. The masculine side is also associated with reasoning and analytical thinking, and it represents power, strength, protection, and discipline. If this energy is in excess, it increases rigidity in one's thinking, and the individual is overly concerned with regards to rules and laws. It can also become very oppressing, and the individual loses his ability to do things. He becomes passive and develops inferiority feelings. He starts to feel like a failure with resultant feelings of unworthiness. So again, I'll repeat, the main aim of the pure consciousness is to overcome non-wholeness and become healed. In other words, to become a whole again. And this is the journey of transforming from the concept of duality to unity. As we age, one needs to integrate the masculine and the feminine elements, because then only can one person become a whole and experience the broad spectrum of what it is to be a human.